I am writing this while sitting on the floor of our spare bedroom with a half-packed box next to me and my husband asleep on the other side of the wall. I am 30 and my husband is 31. We have been together 7 years, married 4. I work in marketing at a mid-sized tech company and he works in operations for a logistics firm. We used to joke that our jobs were opposites because mine was about selling ideas and his was about making sure real things got from point A to point B. That felt like a balance when things were good. It feels like a mismatch now that everything has broken open again. 2 years ago, there was a restructuring at my company. I was moved from a quiet team into a new product group with bigger budgets and louder personalities. I felt like I had to prove myself again. I started staying later, trying to be the person who volunteered for the mess other people avoided. I liked the buzz of that floor. The product was getting attention, and the senior analyst assigned to our launch knew how to make a crowded room lean in. His name is Marcus. He has the kind of energy that settles a meeting. It felt like standing under a warm light when the rest of the building was cold. At the same time, my husband was managing a new warehouse rollout. He left early and came back late. We ate separate meals more often than not. We used to cook together and talk with music on in the background. Then the kitchen turned into a hallway we walked through with different schedules. We had a calendar to keep track of who was home when. It became normal to communicate like coworkers. I told myself it was a season. Every couple has seasons where they pass each other like trains. That is what I kept thinking as I started keeping a spare pair of heels under my desk and getting excited when I saw a meeting invite where Marcus was tagged. I'm not going to make this salacious. I promised I would keep it fit for public platforms. The truth is not cinematic anyway. It was a slow drift that felt like permission because I did not call it what it was while it was happening. I liked how competent I felt next to him. I liked that he noticed when I got a new cut and said the campaign copy had a cleaner edge. I liked that he shared playlists and actually listened when I said I wanted the ad tone to be less clever and more human. He paid attention to the way I solved problems and mirrored it back as if I was bright and a little dangerous in a good way. When your life is spreadsheets and grocery lists, dangerous feels like a word that belongs to some other version of you. I let myself believe I was that person for a while. The first time I crossed a line, it was not even physical. It was staying after a late meeting and sitting with him in a corner of the cafeteria that still had the lights on. We talked about families and childhood and why certain teammates triggered us. I looked at the time and realized I had not texted my husband in hours and felt a thin thrill of getting away with something, then shame, then a determination to call it nothing. Over the next few weeks, we kept finding reasons to linger. If anyone asked, we were aligning timelines. The physical part did not happen all at once. It was small touches that became deliberate. It was a pattern I did not stop. It was me stepping over lines and then framing it to myself as a reaction to loneliness and stress and the way my husband and I had stopped reaching for each other. By the time I admitted to myself it was an affair, it was not a single mistake. It happened multiple times over 3 months. Conference rooms no one booked after 5. A hotel lobby bar during a trade show we both attended for 2 nights. A long lunch that ended with me pretending I had a client call. I am not describing anything graphic. I only need to say I knew exactly what I was choosing, and I kept choosing it, and every time I went home, I told myself I would be stronger tomorrow. I thought I was managing harm because I kept it contained at work, and I told myself I still loved my husband. That is the ugliest part of it, the way I convinced myself I was being honest in the wrong direction. When I finally told my husband, it was not because I was noble. It was because keeping the lie started to bleed into everything. I would look at him and see a shadow of a person I used to be with him, and I could not hold 2 versions of myself without breaking. I told him it had been a rough patch. I told him it happened a handful of times. I said it was over. I cried. He did not raise his voice. He looked like someone had taken all the air out of him. We started counseling. I gave him full access to my phone and accounts. I transferred out of that team and a few months later took an offer at another company. I cut all contact with Marcus, blocked him everywhere, deleted the music playlist that had made the office feel like it belonged to us. I did not tell my husband the man's name. The therapist said it was not always helpful to fixate on the other person, and I took that as permission to protect myself from more questions. For about a year, we were tethered to therapy. I learned how to say the right words. I talked about accountability and transparency and empathy. He talked about grief. We rebuilt rituals. We ate at the table again and watched shows all the way through without one of us scrolling. Our sex life came back in a way that was careful but present. I noticed he looked at me sometimes with the same guarded study he used on a broken tool at work. He would check to see if it still worked the way it used to. I tried to make it work. I tried to prove there was no comparison to be made. I told myself he was healing and I was helping. A year after the affair ended, I believed we were out of the tunnel. We took a weekend trip and walked around a little coastal town and split a sandwich on a bench. I remember thinking that I deserved this gentleness because I had done the hard work. That is the part of my thinking that I know reads selfish. I wanted the chapter to end on my schedule. I wanted the credit to show up like a grade after an exam. Real life does not hand out grades like that. 6 months ago, my old company partnered with a nonprofit for a neighborhood tech initiative. My new company got invited to sponsor a booth. I volunteered because I believed in the cause and because it felt safe. It was Saturday morning on a closed-off street with tents and donated coffee. The atmosphere felt light and useful, like a community trying to help kids learn how to build small things with code. My husband came with me because he likes events where there is something to do with your hands. He said he would help carry boxes and set up the banner. We were side by side in the sun, and it felt ordinary in the way that tells you a marriage might be okay. Around noon, I saw a familiar shape across the street, not because I was looking for him, but because some part of my body recognized his posture before my mind did. Marcus was at the nonprofit's main table, laughing with a volunteer. He turned, and I saw his face fully for the first time in a long time. It was like the building across the street leaned. I felt dizzy. I could have grabbed my husband's arm and said we should get a sandwich. I could have said I felt faint. I stood still instead. A moment later, my husband followed my line of sight. He asked who I was staring at without any suspicion, just curiosity about what had caught my attention. And in that instant, I knew I had two bad choices: say nothing and pretend I was looking at a banner, which would be a lie I could not sustain, or tell him that the person across the street was the man from 2 years ago. I told him. I said that man is the person I was with during the rough patch. I watched the realization hit him in pieces. First the startle, then the way his eyes sharpened to recognize a problem, then a sinking kind of confirmation. He looked at Marcus and then back at me. He had never asked me what the man looked like. He had never asked about race or height or anything that would turn into a comparison. He had deliberately not painted a picture in his head because he did not want a ghost in our bedroom. That is what he said later. But now the ghost had a body in the sun at a community event with posters about giving kids a head start. Now the ghost had a voice and a laugh and a way of standing that communicates comfort in his own skin. My husband did not make a scene. He stepped behind the table and started arranging boxes like the labels mattered more than oxygen. We finished the day as if we did not know we had both been split open again. When we got home, he went quiet in a way that was heavier than the quiet after I confessed the first time. He said he needed some time to think. I gave him space because I was scared of the questions he would ask, and because I had already survived the worst version of this and believed I could survive another round. That was arrogant. He started sleeping like he was guarding a line. On the nights we had sex after that day, it felt like he was trying to find a measurement. He asked more directly for reassurance, but not with words. He would study my face. He would hold me in a way that was almost clinical, like he was trying to read a gauge. I told myself I could meet that need, but the harder I tried to meet it, the more it made the whole thing feel like a test. I could sense him spiraling into comparison, and I could feel myself getting impatient that he could not just accept that I chose him every day now. Over the next few weeks, little remarks started appearing in his speech like splinters. During the news, he would point out the race of someone involved in a story where race did not matter. He used to be the person who called his relatives out for that. I told myself he was just angry at one person and did not know where to put the anger. I told myself it would pass. I also told myself it wasn't my job to manage how he processed what I had done, which is a convenient stance when you're tired of sitting with someone else's pain. This is where my tone probably sounds more narcissistic than I want to admit. I wanted him to stop making me the villain because I felt I had done enough penance, and I wanted the version of him back who put his arm around me and said we would be okay. I did not want the version who kept asking silent questions with his eyes. It got worse the night he used a word I'd never heard him say. He said it like it had always lived in his mouth waiting. I told him I did not want that word in our house. He said I was choosing the other man's side. I said it was about who we are as people. He looked at me like I had told him he was not allowed to be hurt. We slept separately for a week. When we finally tried to be close again, he could not finish, then apologized like he had failed a basic requirement. I did not know how to hold that moment without making it about me. I wanted to be patient, but I also wanted the old ease. The lack of ease turned me brittle. I started thinking about the way Marcus had made me feel noticed. I hate that I thought that. I never reached out. I did not want to go back there. But the comparison machine does not only live in a man's head. It lives in a woman's too, especially a woman who wants to be told she is special when she does not feel special at home. We tried going back to therapy. He said he would go once. He sat through the intake like someone finishing a training module they already did last year. The therapist asked us to describe the event at the nonprofit in neutral terms. I did fine with that. He did not. He said seeing the man turned an old wound into something he could not stop touching. He said he had worked hard not to picture him, and that now his brain had a file to open every time we were in bed. I said I understood. I used the words I learned in the first year about validation and remorse. I used them like tools. He said the tools do not change what happened. He said maybe he is not built to carry this forever. Meanwhile, I kept telling myself we were fine during the day. We organized bills. We sent a card to his sister for her new baby. We discussed paint colors for the hallway like a couple who plans to live here for years. At night, the distance widened. He would turn off the lamp and lie flat on his back like he was in a hospital. I would turn onto my side and stare at the closet door. I am not proud to say I wanted him to snap out of it the way a manager wants a team member to stop fussing and meet the deadline. I am not proud of the impatience I felt when he could not meet me with enthusiasm. I told myself I had already proven myself. I did not want to keep auditioning for a role I already had. A month after the nonprofit event, we went to his cousin's barbecue. It was a normal afternoon with too many side dishes and kids running through sprinklers. His uncle made a joke, with the old nasty tone that used to make my husband push back. This time my husband laughed. Not a full laugh, but a soft agreement laugh. I felt something cold. Later that night, I told him I was disappointed. He said I had forfeited the right to grade him on morals after what I did. That felt like a trap I could not argue my way out of without sounding like the kind of person who cares more about being right than being kind. I kept hoping the summer would flip something in us. Sunlight, fresh starts, all the cliches. Instead, it turned the volume up on every thought. He started making offhand comments in public that made me stiffen. He would point out height or build or make a reference that landed heavy. He's not a stupid man. He knows how words work. I think he was testing me to see if I would defend him or scold him. I reacted with a mix of both, and he called it taking the other man's side again. That line has become a hook he hangs every feeling on. If I say this is uncomfortable, he says I am defending the man who violated our marriage with me. If I say nothing, I feel complicit in a cruelty that does not fit us. 2 weeks ago, we tried intimacy again after avoiding each other for days. He kissed me like he was remembering how to do it. I touched his hair and told him I was here. He closed his eyes and then opened them like he needed visual confirmation I was not somewhere else in my mind. There is no soft way to say what happened next. He lost the thread and pulled away and stared at the wall. I felt rejected and started to cry, then felt angry at myself for crying because it made it about my feelings instead of his. I also felt angry at him for not being okay by now. I know how awful that sounds. I wish I were a better person with endless patience. I am not. That night we decided to sleep in separate rooms. It felt like drawing a line with tape on a floor we had already cracked. The next morning he made coffee and asked if we could take a break from trying to fix it and just stop forcing it. That was the first time he used the word break in a way that did not sound temporary. I went to work and smiled at coworkers and sent emails and acted like my life was normal, then sat in my car at lunch and pretended I was fine. This week we had the conversation that has been hovering over everything since the nonprofit day. We sat at the table where we used to plan meals and vacations, and we talked about selling the house. He said he could not keep living with the ghost of a person he did not want to be. He said he is not okay with who he has become, and he still cannot put the picture of the other man back in the box. He said he was trying to be brave, but it felt like dragging his own heart through gravel every time he looked at me. He said other things I am not going to type because I want to keep a little privacy for both of us. I told him I did not want to lose him. I told him I regret every minute of it. I told him I thought we had made it past the worst and that he is letting one detail ruin years of work. Even as I said it, I heard how it sounded. Like I was minimizing because the detail is a person, not a detail, and that person is who he thinks about when he closes his eyes. We decided to separate. That is the clean version. The messier version is that I started packing a box tonight and stopped because I could not decide if I should bring the framed photos from our wedding or leave them in the cabinet and pretend they are part of the house. He is on the other side of the wall, breathing the way someone breathes when they finally fall asleep after days of not sleeping well. I am writing this because I keep cycling through the same 5 thoughts and none of them change anything. Here is how he found out and why it mattered. He did not know that Marcus is black because he never asked. He never asked because he did not want to know anything that would turn into a competition in his head. He did not want to measure himself against another person and then see that measurement reflected in my face. The day he saw Marcus at the nonprofit table, all the things he had kept blurry came into focus. He saw skin, height, body language, a style that is nothing like his. He saw me react to the sight of an old secret. He put that picture next to every moment we have had since I confessed, and he could not stop drawing lines between them. Our therapist would say he is catastrophizing. I think he is protecting himself from a lifetime of wondering if he is enough. He decided wondering forever would be worse than ending it now. The part that hurts in a way I do not know what to do with is that I still believe I love my husband while I was making the worst choices of my adult life. I also know how that sentence reads. It reads like a justification from someone who wants both sympathy and absolution. I'm not asking for either. I am writing this because I am experiencing the consequences of who I was for those months and who I have been since. I have not been patient enough. I have wanted gold stars for doing the bare minimum of contrition. I have focused on my discomfort more than his. I became defensive when he became someone I did not recognize, instead of reckoning with the fact that I created the circumstances that allowed that version of him to exist. People will ask how I got close to my coworker. I got close because I wanted to be seen and admired for something other than being a reliable wife and a competent employee. I wanted to be interesting. I flirted with the idea of myself that he reflected back at me, and then I let that idea take over. It started the second week on that new team when he stayed to help me clean up a chaotic presentation deck, and we decided the deck needed a better hook, and we ordered takeout. It became a pattern when I started looking forward to his jokes about how the product would be better if the engineers would just let the marketing team name it. It turned into something physical because we did not stop the drift when we both felt it, and because I told myself it would end soon and no one would be hurt if I kept it contained. There is no containing the fallout of this kind of thing. It spills everywhere months and years later, in places you think you already mopped clean. If you are reading this and thinking I sound self-centered, you are not wrong. I am writing from my point of view, and that always carries the risk of turning other people into supporting characters in your own drama. My husband is not a supporting character. He is the person who built me a desk when I started working from home and fixed the squeaky hinge on the back door without being asked. He is the person who held my hair when I got food poisoning and who learned to make my favorite pasta the way my grandmother did. He is also the person who laughed at a joke he would have corrected 2 years ago, and who used a word in our kitchen that I never wanted to hear from him. Both versions are true. The second version might not have existed if I had not created the conditions for it to grow. I am not saying I am responsible for every word he chooses, but I am not pretending my actions are separate from what has followed. We have an appointment with a mediator next week to talk about what comes next. I am staying with a friend for a few days while we get used to the logistics of not sleeping under the same roof. He wants to keep the house because he has more family nearby and because the garage is his refuge. I said I would take the apartment closer to my office. We have a list of things to split. I have a list of passwords to change that I never thought I would need to change again after the first time. We have not told many people. His sister knows. My mom knows a version that is kind to me. That was another selfish choice. People will find out in drips, and then the story will exist outside of us, and that will be another layer of grief. I keep waiting for the part where I feel clean. It is not coming. I feel like someone who wants to rewind and cannot decide how far back to go. If I go back 2 years, I would quit sooner. If I go back 7 years, I would tell our younger selves to stop treating work like a god. If I go back to last month, I would pull his hand and say, let's get a sandwich, before he noticed the person across the street. That is not how time works. Time moves forward, and you move with it, even when you want to grab the edges and pull. I do not know what I want from posting this. Maybe I want a stranger to tell me I am not a monster. Maybe I want someone to tell me that ending a marriage can be the merciful choice when the comparison has taken root so deep that no one can sleep. Maybe I want to hear from people who separated and then found a way to like themselves again. I do not need advice about blocking the coworker. That part is done and has been done. I do not need suggestions about fantasies or scripts for the bedroom. We tried everything. The mind is stubborn when it is protecting itself. I love my husband. I love him still. I did not protect him when it counted. I thought we had healed, and we did for a while. Or at least we built a bridge across the hole. Then he saw the person I had worked so hard to keep faceless, and the bridge turned into a measurement device neither of us could stop reading. He became someone he doesn't like. I became someone I do not admire. So we are ending it, not with a bang, just with packed boxes and forwarding addresses and a list of streaming services to cancel. If you need a moral, I do not have a neat one. I have a real one. When you make a choice that breaks trust, you do not get to control how the person you hurt carries it. You do not get to choose what details matter to them. You do not get to schedule the end of their pain for when it is convenient to your new sense of yourself as redeemed. If you step into a space that makes you feel electric because it wakes up parts of you that went quiet, you do not get to pretend you are the only one who pays the bill. Everyone pays. Sometimes, years later, at a community event with free coffee and a poster about helping kids learn to code. I will finish packing this box tomorrow. I will leave the wedding photos in the cabinet for now because I cannot decide if they belong to the past or if they are evidence that the past was real. He will move his tools to his brother's garage for a while. We will meet the mediator and figure out bank accounts and furniture, and then we will learn how to be people who nod at each other if we pass in a grocery store. He will probably find someone who has never made him question his worth. I hope I find a version of myself who does not need to be reflected by a stranger to believe she is interesting. I know how much control I pretend to have and how little I actually have. This is the true of my chess version, the present tense one, not the polished reflection. I am in it, and it feels like standing in a room with the smoke alarm beeping every minute. Not loud enough to call the fire department, too loud to ignore. I am the reason it keeps going off. I am also the person who has to stand here and listen until the batteries run out, or I find a way to turn it off without breaking the ceiling. If you think I sound self-centered, you are probably right. I am trying to be honest. Honesty has not been my strongest muscle. I am working it now with boxes and a keyboard and a marriage that is becoming a story.